Hi everyone, welcome to week 4 of your technical math class. This week we're going to be covering chapter 7. Chapter 7 is all about graphing linear equations, and last week we learned what a linear equation was. An equation has to have an equal sign in it. The one thing that a linear equation does not have is things like exponents. So if you see an exponent in an equation, that is not a linear equation. However, most of the equations you're going to be dealing with going forward are going to be linear. So these are the 4 topics that are covered this week: graphical representations of linear equations. What that simply means is, how do I graph a linear equation on a coordinate plane or on an XY axis? And then it talks about, in the next section, graphing linear equations with 2 variables using alternative methods. So it's no different than what you're doing in the first section. It's just showing you other ways to do it. So it's just saying, well, what if you have other pieces of information? How can I graph that linear equation? Then it gets into talking about slope, and then how to actually write an equation of a line. So there's a lot of information in each of these topics, but I've tried to give you some extra stuff in my PowerPoint that kind of simplifies some of it. So if you're not sure how to do something, refer back to this PowerPoint. There might be a slide or two that shows you another way to do it. I'm not going to go through every one of these slides in my video, but I did want to point out a few things, just some highlights, some things that I want to make sure that you notice. Okay, so the first is the graphical representation of linear equations. So what that means is how do I graph an equation? What does that even mean? So the first thing is the definition of the rectangular coordinate system. So you've got a picture in your textbook. I've provided one for you here, but this basically shows you it's just an XY axis, and how do I plot points? So keep in mind that when you look at an XY axis, the X is the horizontal and the Y is the vertical. Positives go to the right on the x-axis, and left on that x-axis is negatives. And then positives go up on the y, and negatives go down on the y. So that kind of gives you an idea of what goes where. We always list an ordered pair with the x first and the y second. So these are the 4 different quadrants. These are the axes. Positives this direction for x, and this direction for y. Negatives for x, negatives for y. And then from there, we are going to plot points. So the first point in an ordered pair, the solution of the equation, that first point is the x. So that tells me whether I go left or right on the x-axis. So back to here, x is left or right, y is up and down. So the ordered pair is going to tell me first whether I go left or right, and second whether I go up or down. So this is an example. Here's a point, and we don't have an equation to go with this one. It's just a point so that you can kind of get used to the feel of how to plot. So here's the point. X is 3, y is 4. So that means we go to the right 3 and then up 4, because they're both positive. So the x is first, y is second. Here's another example. This time the x is negative, so that means we go to the left first. So we go left 4, y is still positive, so we go up 2. And here is a third example. The x is positive, so we go right 2, and we go down 4 because the y is negative. So you can see that the positive and negative pieces, as far as the x and the y's, will put your points at different places within that coordinate plane. So when we're graphing a linear equation, what we want to do is we want to make a table to find ordered pairs like the ones we just looked at. And then once we have all the different pairs of numbers that will make an equation true, we're going to plot those points on the graph, and then we're going to draw a line through those points. So here is our first example. Here's the equation, 2x plus 4y equals 4, and we want to graph that. So we need to have values for x and values for y that will make this equation true. So what we've done first is just pick some arbitrary numbers to put in here so that we can start the process. So they picked random numbers. It's always great to pick 0 for both x and y and solve for the missing piece, because those are always great points to use. And then they picked a third. We always want to have 3 points to find a line. So we picked x to be 0, and we need to find out what y will be. We picked y to be 0. We need to find out what x will be. We picked x to be 4. We need to find out what y will be. So we have 3 different scenarios. So the next slide actually solves the equation for us 3 times with each of those 3 scenarios. So you can see in the first example, okay, so this one right here, we use this equation and we put in 0 for the x value. So they put in 0 and they go all the way through the solving process. So when x is 0, y is going to equal 1. Then they turned around and did the exact same thing for what happens if y is 0. Let's put in 0 for y and solve this equation all the way down. If y is 0, x is 2. And then finally, what happens if x is 4? And that's what this last column is. If we put in 4 for x and solve for y, we get -1. So ultimately, we ended up with 3 ordered pairs. We have the pair 0, 1, we have the pair 2, 0, and we have 4, -1. So what we're going to do then is we're going to put those back into our table. There you go, 0, 1, 2, 0, 4, -1. Then we're going to take those and we're going to plot those points. So there's those 3 points. They've been plotted and we drew a line through them. That's the graph of the equation. So that's section 1 of this chapter. Like I said, I've given you a lot of other slides that kind of go through the other pieces of this chapter. But if you're having struggles or you don't understand the book or the PowerPoint, make sure that you reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. And my contact information is, as always, is at the end of the slideshow. So there it is. You can call me, text me, or email. So if there's anything I can help you with, let me know, and have a great week.